Welcome back to Recovery Demystified. My name's Early. I'm so happy to have y'all here today. If you haven't quite found your place in addiction recovery yet, if what's out there just hasn't been resonating with you, if you feel a little bit left behind, guess what? You're not left behind anymore because I am coming back for you. I felt left behind for so long. I felt so out of place, and now I have all of these wonderful, helpful resources that I'm super stoked to share with you guys. Today, I'm going to be talking a bit about the alcohol industrial complex and brainwashing. But I guess I first want to address that the sound quality is probably going to be a little bit shittier on this episode. I'm just at my house talking into the refurbished $16 microphone that I bought off the internet with some money that one of y'all lovely folks donated. So thank you for that. I live like 45 minutes away from town, and I usually record at the Fayetteville Public Library's podcast booth, which produces excellent sound quality. And, you know, I talk all the time about how I'm autistic, and for me, sound quality in a podcast is so important. Like, I've listened to some podcasts in the past that had god-awful sound quality, but really good content, and it's just always a debate in my mind of, like, whether or not to turn it off. And I want to be super disability friendly with this podcast, so hopefully my at-home recording will be acceptable. It is a beautiful, rainy summer day out here in the Ozarks. Usually summer is like pretty ragged and rugged here. Like by this time of year, Mother Nature really is playing tricks on us. In Arkansas this time of year, typically, it's like it gets so insufferably hot and it stops raining and it's insufferably humid and all of the waterways dry up and there's just kind of like warm little pits of bathwater you can go lay down in. And then there's just, you know, some obscene amount of ticks and rattlesnakes and you're just out there in 1,000,000% humidity being fried by the sun with nowhere to swim. And this year it's so different. Like it's been raining so often that I haven't even watered my garden a single time. It's literally not even 80 degrees right now, and I'm so thankful. It's like the best summer ever. I have a big pile of cucumbers and tomatoes on my counter that I'm going to have to get after squirreling away after I'm done talking to y'all for a little bit here. So, beautiful summer. Super stoked about it. Not getting fried right now, which I love. And also, since I'm recording at home, y'all, I have 1,000,000 dogs. Actually, I just have 5 dogs. But you might hear my ancient old Chihuahua snoring in the background. You might hear one of my other dogs click-clacking in here with their long toenails on the floor. Or you might hear a chicken outside if you're lucky. Sometimes they squawk to celebrate that they've laid an egg, which I think is really sweet. But I do love recording at home, even though it doesn't sound quite as good, because I have this really sweet like desk area in my guest room by the computer that was also donated by someone super generous. So thank you for donating this lovely computer so I can do this work. And behind my desk, I have all of these film photos of some of my friends that have died over the years. And once in a while, when I get stressed out about like, you know, the work that it takes to hold this recovery space for folks, you know, we all have wormy little thoughts in our brains, and once in a while part of my brain's like, just quit doing this, it's too much work or whatever. And I simply have to come in here and sit at my desk, look at these pictures of these wonderful, special, precious people that died from their addictions, and that thought immediately leaves my brain. I'm like, if I can help one person stay alive and survive by doing what I do, then it's worth it. And these people in these pictures, God, I miss them so much. You know, every time one of my friends disappears, it sucks. And I'm sure some of y'all know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So I do like recording at home. I'm sorry it doesn't sound quite as good, but hopefully it's not too insufferable. Anyway, here to talk to you about community and alone time, but from the perspective of evolution, alcohol industrial complex advertising, brainwashing, and stuff like that. So initially when we started our support groups, we were at the Fayetteville Public Library, and I had this like big screen behind this like huge fancy table in this meeting room that we would rent for way too much money. And I would make these really fun slideshows that I really enjoyed making. And now we're at a therapist office and I don't have any fancy equipment, but it doesn't cost any money, which is awesome. So I can't do my slideshows anymore, but I still have a few of them saved on the computer. And for those of y'all that haven't been able to make it to our support groups, I guess I just want to share those slideshows with y'all because I'm pretty proud of them. I think that they turned out good and they're really fun to make. So, okay. The concept here is community and alone time. And we've been talking a lot in our support groups about like socializing in recovery and how that changes. Like a lot of times we realize, oh, a lot of my friends aren't actually my friends and they kind of suck, or like maybe we start to realize we need more alone time, or maybe we're super lonely and we realize like, oh, I actually need to do some community building. And that can be super hard work. And I just want to acknowledge that whatever you're going through in your social life in recovery, if it's hard, you're not alone. And it's okay. And it's not going to be like this forever. Just take a step in the right direction every day and eventually you'll get to where you need to be. Okay, I'm going to link the slideshow in the show notes so y'all can follow along if you'd like. So the first slide on here says, why do humans seek community and approval? And I think a lot of times maybe we feel like kind of desperate or like a freak for having social anxiety or for wondering what people think about us, but actually that is like the most normal human thing that literally everyone goes through to some extent or another. And it is because our brains haven't changed much at all in the past 10,000 years. Like the world around us changes really, really fast, but evolution is a thing that happens really, really slow. So our brains are the same now basically as they were 10,000 years ago, and the world ain't like that anymore. And we just like continue to run off of this programming that basically just like allowed us to survive in ancient times. And our brain is essentially a don't get killed machine, you know? So it has these things built into it, strong emotions, feelings, thoughts, things just persuade us to stay alive. And what kept us alive in ancient times was our power in numbers. We don't have a ton of defense mechanisms on our own. You know, we can't fly. We don't have sharp claws or teeth, or we can't run super fast. Like the only thing that kept us alive historically in ancient times was living in groups. And if we became excluded from the group, that basically meant certain death. So humans lived in conjunction with one another for protection against predators. We had to live together to have a division of labor because it's kind of like impossible for one human just to do everything, right? Like even if you do hunt an animal, how can you like preserve it all by itself and care for the children and build shelter and and collect water and do everything? So historically, humans lived in groups to have division of labor, to share the tasks, to be able to survive, and then obviously procreation. So this is exactly why our minds give us such potent messages to seek approval and worry about disapproval. So if you've ever had social anxiety, that is worrying about approval. That is approval seeking. And that is normal because your brain wants to survive. If you have social anxiety, good. You know, that's a normal brain working normally, as I see it. Obviously, sometimes social anxiety can get to the point where it is like, you know, panic inducing, or it prevents us from socially connecting. And that kind of stuff, you know, get on it with your therapist about that. If social anxiety is like to an extent where it is really screwing up your life. But having some amount of social anxiety, from my perspective, that's normal. That's a healthy brain. And also, it is so normal to worry about what other people think about us, similarly. Because if people think badly of us and we're rejected from our group and we're out on our own with this like ancient survival brain, to our brain, that means we're gonna die. So if our brain is like, oh no, what did I say? What did I do? What did this person think of me? Blah, blah, blah. You're normal. Okay? You're seeking community. You want to survive. That is your brain giving you normal, healthy messages. And the thing about it is that alcohol companies are acutely aware of this, which is why they heavily market their products as necessary for social interaction. How many alcohol advertisements have you seen of like people smiling and partying together, all hanging out on the beach? Oh, you have to have alcohol at your barbecue and your wedding and your whatever, your work gatherings and blah, blah, blah. Like we did this in the support group one day where we pulled up a bunch of alcohol advertisements and was like, what are they selling us here? And oftentimes it is approval. It is social interaction. These companies have completely brainwashed us to think that alcohol is required for social interaction, and it is because they make billions of dollars selling shit to us. So they're gonna like worm their way into whatever corner of our brain is most effective for advertising, and social approval, since it affects 100% of us, is a great way to advertise, and it's working, and it's why they keep doing it. And one time in one of our support groups, also one of our participants brought up this documentary called The Century of the Self, and it's from 2002, and it's by Adam Curtis, and basically it goes over like the concepts of psychoanalysis of Sigmund Freud and Anna Freud, and through the lens of a PR consultant named Edward Bernays. And so like before advertising really sunk in, how companies would sell us stuff was by its function, right? It would be like, okay, I'm trying to sell you a cleaning product because it cleans really well, and I'm going to show you how effectively it cleans. And that is how products used to be sold before Edward Bernays came on the scene. And then he convinced companies and governments, actually, as you get further into the documentary, that if we can find a way to sell the product to like change the person's life and change their perspective and fill this like psychological emotional void they may have, that is actually a much more effective form of advertising. And they staged this whole demonstration during the women's liberation or the women's suffrage movement, where they were like, oh yeah, you're a rebellious woman if you smoke cigarettes. And it was this like big ordeal put together by the tobacco company, and it freaking worked. And then rebellion in women got associated with smoking cigarettes. Same thing, they put it in movies. They were like, smoking makes you cool in movies, and people still think that. No one thought that before. It was because they needed to like sell some massive backlog of cigarettes ahead in a warehouse somewhere. You know what I mean? It's like once they found out they could sell something to fill a void inside of you instead of sell something to you because it's like an effective product, advertising completely changed after that. And Annie Grace, the author of This Naked Mind, before she became an addiction recovery advocate and author, she worked for some multinational corporation as a marketer. So she's pretty much an expert in that. I want to read a section of her book called The Wound of Existence that goes over how marketers do this exactly. She says, with this framework in mind, let's talk about another important aspect of marketing. Marketers actually create need by speaking to your vulnerabilities. How? We play heavily on the human condition. Humans are not satisfied with simply existing. We look for more. No other animal questions their purpose in life or how they fit into the universe. This is one of the remarkable features that makes us uniquely human. But this questioning often creates a void inside of us. We have more questions than answers, which causes tension. We desire more. This affliction is often called the wound of existence. Marketers play into this. Our natural internal yearning can be easily and unconsciously directed. We not only sell sex when selling perfume, we promise fulfillment, completion, satisfaction, and self-actualization. We present a lifestyle that promises to satisfy your restlessness. Through marketing, we tell you that if only you were thinner, smarter, sexier, you would find contentment. Your life would be complete. You don't realize that the restlessness you feel is simply part of being human, so you always look for ways to eliminate it. But ask yourself, even if you were handed everything you wanted, would it make you truly happy? Dan Harris explains this as the hedonic adaptation. When good things happen, we bake them in very quickly to our baseline expectations, yet the primordial void goes unfilled. Generally, the more we consume, the more we desire. Existentialist psychotherapist Irvin D. Yalom identified what he calls humans' ultimate concerns: death, isolation, loneliness, freedom, and meaning. These concerns reflect our deep fundamental needs. We search to understand the meaning of life, but no question provokes more debate. We feel desperate to experience gratification, so much so that we often rob ourselves of it by overindulging. We grapple with the inevitability of isolation and feel alone even in groups or families. We are painfully aware of the inescapability of death. We pursue pleasure and fulfillment in a never-ending search for satisfaction. Harris says, it is the lie we tell ourselves our whole lives. As soon as we get the next meal, party, vacation, sexual encounter, as soon as we get married, get a promotion, get to the airport check-in, get through security and consume a bouquet of Auntie Anne's cinnamon sugar sticks will feel really good. And yet the itch remains. Marketing plays directly into these concerns. Alcohol commercials promise friendship, acceptance, gratification, happiness, and youth. And y'all, if you want a copy of Annie Grace's This Naked Mind, we got a bunch of them donated from her to our free book project. So holler at me in the email, info@recoverydemystified.com. I'm super stoked to send that to you. But yeah, it's like we have these alcohol companies and they pay so much money to do research into like what is psychologically effective. And then they sell us toxic, addictive poison to try to fill a void in our lives. And it works. But what also works is the awareness that they're doing that, right? We can work against that by educating ourselves, gaining awareness, learning, and then making the choice to understand that and actively rebel against it. Another thing concerning community is this concept of individualism. And this is like one of the harmful concepts that capitalism uses to keep us separate from each other. Like learning something new or achieving a goal is great. Like I'm not arguing with that and being like, yes, I did it, you know, like that's great. But saying like, I did it all on my own and having that be held as some like inherent value is bullshit, in my opinion. And it's going back to that whole thing of like, we need community to survive. We need community to experience humanity in like depth and wholeness in our lives. If capitalism is able to get us all to value being individuals higher than it is getting us to value working together with each other and like getting over our differences and understanding each other and building community, if they can get us to value individualism instead, that keeps us separate, and when we're separate, we're much easier to control. So if you're not looking at the slideshow, it's a comic that says Rugged Individualism Productions, and in the comic, they have like kind of like an assembly line of people's heads where they're taking it's news companies and in the comic, and they're taking people's brains out of their heads, putting them under a shower looking thing. Presumably, what they mean is brainwashing. And then along the assembly line, they're putting the washed brains back in people's heads. And this comic, for me, nails it. I'm like, individualism is brainwashing by capitalism, and it keeps us separated from each other, and we accomplish less. And people get depressed when they feel isolated, and we're easier to control when we're isolated. And that's why they do it. And I don't know, just a little side note, I guess. I feel like social media, I mean, it obviously has its benefits in some ways. Like anyone can create content, and it like destroys the monopoly on content creation by mega corporations. But this concept that like our friends are in our likes or in our phone or whatever, to me, that is like further separating us and creating more of this like individualist, pull yourself up by your bootstraps concept, which I think is crap, and it's not real community. Okay, in the next slide, I talk about the great question when we're talking about socializing and in recovery. And I think we need to ask ourselves, why am I here? Why am I here? If you're at a function, you know what I mean? And be honest with yourself. What's the answer? What are you actually doing there? You know, like, are you there because you feel pressured? Are you there because of FOMO and nothing else? Are you there because you're worried people will judge you if you're not there? Or are you there because you're feeling nourished and it's something you want to do and it's fun? And the picture in the slide is this group of people. They seem to be in two teams, like at a park playing some kind of ring toss game. And they're like high-fiving. They got their hands in the air. They look like they're having a super fun time. Not a bottle of beer in sight, I'll tell you that much. And it's like the people in this picture, it looks like they're there because they're having a fun time in the park and they're enjoying each other, you know? And if that's the answer, why am I here? The answer maybe is I'm enjoying time with my friends and family in the park and I'm having fun and I love playing this game. Like, that's a great answer. But if you're like, if you look up and around you and you're just like, why am I here? And the answer is because this is what I've always done, or because I'm afraid of missing out, or because I feel pressured. That's data, you know, that's you studying yourself like a scientist in your own life and gathering data about like, why am I here? And the thing about social interaction is that if it is truly nourishing social interaction, you don't need to numb yourself with substances to experience that. If you need to numb your discomfort with substances, ask yourself again, why am I here? Why am I here? And like some amount of discomfort is normal. Like we talked about before, social anxiety, worrying about what people think about us, a little bit of that is normal. That's a normal brain. So if you're in a social interaction, especially if you haven't been sober or off drugs or whatever for a long time, and you're experiencing some discomfort, I definitely like encourage you to lean into that discomfort and survive it and do something healthy to like process it and integrate it in a normal way. And as time goes on, you're going to get more and more comfortable doing social things that are fulfilling for you, and that anxiety is going to tame down. And you know, humans are very adaptable. Once you get used to socializing sober, you're going to find what works for you, what doesn't work for you. You're going to get your coping skills in order. You're going to figure out if you just always want to be chilling with that can of seltzer water, maybe you need to leave the function at 9 o'clock to make your bedtime, you know? But it's all studying yourself. It's all data gathering. Ask yourself, like, why am I here? Like, do I feel a need to numb? Am I here because I'm feeling pressured? Things like that. And listen to your inner intuition and try new things. And maybe the stuff you like to do before, maybe you don't like to do that anymore, and that's okay. The next slide is this chart that I love to show, which is, gosh, I really encourage y'all to be looking at the slides when I'm doing this, but I can also just describe it if you're in the car or something. So it is this chart called the hedonic homeostatic dysregulation chart. And I know that's like a lot of big science jargon words, but basically this chart explains sometimes why normal things don't feel good anymore. I remember when I was drinking a lot, I was at the beach with my friends in Florida, and everyone's like swimming and we're just like chilling, having a nice day at the beach, but I felt nothing. I didn't feel anything. And I was like, I know this is technically fun. I know if I wasn't at the beach with my friends, I would want to be at the beach with my friends, but I literally feel nothing. I do not feel good right now. And I thought I was broken or crazy or something was wrong with me. But the reason why normal things don't feel good anymore when we have an addiction or when we've recently quit is because addictive substances give us this like massive spike of dopamine that we're not used to in our brain. We're used to like tiny manageable amounts of dopamine. And when we get these huge spikes in dopamine, our brain, which always wants to be in homeostasis, will respond to the dopamine with other regulating brain chemicals, things that will bring us back into homeostasis. And eventually, after we have a predictable amount of these enormous dopamine spikes, our brain will shift by lowering our baseline threshold for experiencing pleasure. So things that gave us a normal amount of dopamine previously will now feel like nothing, because of that increased threshold for experiencing pleasure. And that is the hedonic threshold. And that is when we're experiencing hedonic homeostatic dysregulation. And the chart on this slide illustrates that really well. And the good thing about this, man, our brains and our bodies are so smart and so adaptive. Eventually, after we are like abstinent of substances for long enough, it gets re-regulated again. And then eventually, I mean, it's different for each person. I feel like I maybe started to notice it like a year into recovery, and that sounds like so long, but I promise it's worth it, that I started to feel pleasure from normal things again. And it's really exciting to see that healing occur. And it's just so inspirational that like the mind and the body can heal from anything. So just as our brains adapted to these increased levels of dopamine by lowering our baseline threshold for experiencing pleasure, we can also re-regulate from a period of abstinence. And if normal things don't feel good to you right now, just say thank you, brain and body, for adapting to these changes, and try to gain some peace with it. And as time goes on, your brain and body is going to adapt back to a normal baseline, and normal things will feel good again, I promise. All right, and the next slide is just talking a little bit about alone time. So for a lot of people, part of addiction is just avoiding feeling anything uncomfortable. And it's also easy to avoid facing our feelings by constantly surrounding ourselves with other people. And then conversely, some people experience loneliness instead, like they don't have enough community. So it's important to figure out, like, for yourself what your personal balance of alone time is. Alone time is so important for creativity, routines. It gives you a place for problem solving, regulating your emotions, trying to learn how to experience peacefulness. Like, humans need a bit of alone time, and it's going to be different for everyone. And sometimes if we get too much alone time, we get into that loneliness zone. And it's important to, like, have an awareness of, like, am I lonely or am I alone? Or am I uncomfortable with being alone? And it's also okay to be uncomfortable with being alone at first and trying to figure out the balance with that. And like everything else with discomfort, I encourage everyone to lean into it and ask questions of yourself and use it as a data gathering mission and figure out, like, why am I uncomfortable being alone? And it is hard to be with our thoughts at first. Like, thank you to all substances for helping us survive the discomfort for this long, but we're going to have to learn how to tolerate it. Like, I had a therapist once that looked at me dead ass and was like, you're going to have to learn how to feel uncomfortable. And I was like, fuck you, but you're right. But yeah, I mean, there's just, like, a balance for everyone of a healthy amount of alone time, and it's just going to take some experimentation. And just because you're uncomfortable when you're alone does not mean that it is unhealthy. And then last, I talked about this a little bit in the introduction to Elise's episode, but the last slide on here is just asking again about the rat park experiment, which I think is really freaking interesting. And it also has to do with the concept of community and recovery. So basically the rat park experiment was done by Bruce K. Alexander in the 1970s, and previous to that, the only science that they had on addiction was one rat in one cage, and it had, I think in the last episode I said it was cocaine water, which is what I thought it was, but I guess it's morphine water, drug water. There's drug water and regular water, and the rat that's alone in a cage, all depressed to shit, is gonna be drinking the morphine water and overdose and die because it's fucking depressed. And then Bruce K. Alexander, what he did with the rat park experiment was make, like, a huge utopia for rats where there's a bunch of them in there. They could play, they could have friends, they could have sex, they could do all the normal rat stuff. And the rats in this cage would test the drug water once in a while, but they would never get addicted and they would never overdose. And what they proved by the rat park experiment was that when these animals are in a healthy mind space, they are not going to be getting depressed and addicted to shit. And this carries, I guess, rats are a lot like humans in the, like, way that they engage in community. And this carries over to humans because a lot of times if we are, like, fucking depressed and our life is bullshit and we're alone and we're isolated, the self-medication is going to be what we need to do to survive and save our lives. And as soon as we can change and find this balance of community and alone time and ask ourselves, why am I here? And ask myself, what do I need? And figure out how to survive that discomfort of the social anxiety, figure out how to survive the discomfort of being with our thoughts when we're alone, learning, growing, changing, and adapting to this new sober balance of community and alone time, then we can be chilling in Rat Park. And if we're not so depressed and if we're meeting our own needs, listening to our intuition and building on that, then the need for drugs or whatever mind-altering substances, perhaps, will dampen down a bit. And I'll link it in the description, but Johan Hari has a really good TED Talk about addiction. He also speaks about when the soldiers got back from Vietnam, which is also super interesting. So it's like a lot of soldiers in Vietnam got addicted to heroin because, surprise, surprise, being at war blows. It's horrifying, and people would self-medicate to survive that experience. So a shit ton of soldiers in Vietnam got addicted to heroin, and a lot of people were rightfully worried, oh, like when they all come back from the war, are we gonna have like a huge heroin addict epidemic situation going on? But what actually happened was the vast majority of them, when they got back to the United States and they weren't in a horrifying, fucked up war zone anymore, they just stopped doing heroin. And I don't think that's that surprising. So yeah, Rat Park and all that stuff, I think is like a great illustration of how when we look inside of ourselves and ask ourselves, like, what do I need? Why am I here? how can I support myself in my own personal balance of what I need from community and alone time, that when we're able to do that, study ourselves like scientists and give ourselves what we need, learn about ourselves, that eventually that healing happens and we're able to like release a lot of the craving for substances because we don't have to mask the discomfort anymore because we're really good at experiencing the discomfort, or the discomfort is dampened down, or we have like wonderful coping skills now and we're not forcing ourselves into situations that we don't need to be in. And I guess that's the end of the slideshow. I'd be super stoked to hear what y'all think. I love your feedback. Holler at me in the email, info@recoverydemystified.com. Yeah, I guess I better go squirrel away this pile of tomatoes and cucumbers I have on my counter. Make me some delicious pickles. All right, my dear friends, if you're suffering today, I believe in you. I think you're the badass motherfucker. I think that you can achieve whatever goals you set out for yourself. And I love you. You can do this. May you be happy and free. Recovery Demystified is produced and edited by me, Early Brunner. Stevie Petet made our logo. Our social media manager is Kaylee Bausch. Logan Bragg wrote our beautiful theme music. We are entirely supported by donations as a 501c3 nonprofit. Your tax-deductible donations can be made to our Venmo or to our PayPal at Recovery Demystified. May you be happy and free, dear listener.